Rotary is an amazing institution, isn't it? Today I am sitting opposite JB, whose parents happen to be very dear friends of ours, and who actually introduced us to Rex Buckingham many, many years ago, who has since become a very dear friend. So all thanks to Rotary. It is a great pleasure to introduce Rex to the microphone today. Rex, as I say, I've known for many years. Rex is married to Jennifer, I think 40 years next year. Rex, is that right? Last year, sorry, so 41 years next year. Rex has two children. He has a son, Anthony, who's married to Nat. He has a daughter, Stacey, and son-in-law, Tim, who have just returned from Melbourne, and also has a grandchild called Edith, who is the highlight of Rex's life. Rex has, for 35 years, had consulting experience. Rex mentioned to me that many of the associated problems these days with business is not due to the fact that it's bad people, it's actually bad behaviour, and very often to do with poor leadership. So without any further ado, please welcome Rex to the microphone. Thank you, Rex.
I met with Ian yesterday at coffee so I could help him understand what he should say about me, and I said when I finished, you'll probably not use any of it, and he used none of it. So that was a good start. I've got a little movie here I want to show, and I'd like to thank all of my friends today for helping me get through this, to get me onto the computer, and I'm now going to endeavour to follow the cue. Can you all see me? Because I do need to see all of your faces to make sure no one's sleeping and stuff, because it's about bullying and that would be nasty. So, can you just... Let's give it a go. It was okay, but it didn't say okay here in the second minute. Can you help us with it? Here we go. I want you to pay attention. Listen carefully. You may have seen it before. Yes, any moment now we'll start. Wasn't it? This was a really wonderful little video that sort of underpinned what I was going to do today. And after all the work we did, we got it up, but we didn't get the sound quite right, as you may have noticed. On my website, I'll post the URL, and it's really worthwhile looking for. Just to quickly give you an idea about it, it's an American captain on the biggest US submarine, and they're hurtling through the seas, and suddenly the radar guy sees an object in front and asks it to move, because we are, after all, the biggest US ship in this particular ocean. And back comes the answer, no. And so the poor little guy who's about to get bullied says, no, please move. And then the admiral or captain or whoever's on charge in this particular submarine snatches the microphone and says, "This is Captain so-and-so of the US. You will move." And the answer came back negative, which only got the captain person to be speaking slightly louder. And the end result of this was, this is a lighthouse. your move. Thank you for being here today. I do see an entire table decided not to come, which is a little bit hurtful for me, but maybe next time. Could you just show me by movement of your hands, that's a little bit of exercise, who here is currently fully retired? Who here is currently not fully retired? Who here has a family? Oh, that's good. Then this talk is for everybody in all parts of your life. And I don't propose to think that I actually fulfill a lot of what I'm going to talk about, but I do seek to do it. I was at a meeting on Monday that was put together by Rob Falconer, and I had to be very careful that I didn't go into any bullying stance myself as I look to pursue some forward motion. So I have a passion about bullying, and that's why I think I might have even bullied my way into the speakers list, because I really wanted to engage with you. You know, I do a lot of public speaking. You may wonder at that, but I do. And I don't remember when I've agonised over what I'm going to say as much as I have to talk to you today. I've had 3 different scripts, a PowerPoint presentation, 17 dancing girls, and I've done none of that. I had 7 pages down to 3 pages, up to 1 page, and I don't even think I'll read it. I went and visited the Commissioner for Public Employment today, and she, you might recall, spoke here about 6 or 7 weeks ago. Do you recall that? Oh, okay. And because they've just put out a whole new code of ethics, and I went to say to her that that was really a bullying tactic, because if you don't teach the people how to think differently, they won't know how to behave differently, and this new code will probably fall flat. So she received me quite graciously. So what I'm going to talk about is really whole of life, and it's a concept that I've been carrying because in my work I deal mostly with behaviour. I never ever get asked to go to any business under behaviour, but almost always the problem in the business is behaviour. And once we get people talking to each other and we get that bullying out the way, then all those businesses can almost always fix all of their problems, because the capacity is already sitting around the table that needs to be released. So some of the things I've written down here is, of course, duty of care says that we don't leave people in a situation where they have any physical or psychological stress. And I'm afraid, unfortunately, as you all know, and someone at the table has already shared with me, oh boy, if only I could have brought some of my past bosses along today. Well, so my concept is different, because it seems to me we're not getting anywhere with the bullying. It seems to me that, in fact, we often bully the person we say is the bully. And we give them sorts of promises like, you'll leave here if you don't get better, but very rarely do we give very effective assistance to that person changing the way they behave. Interestingly, when I went around today and I was talking to people and they knew I was speaking, 3 people said to me, and I won't mention any names, Colin, that in fact, is it okay if I heckle a lot? Yeah, that's Colin back there, in case you didn't know him, the man with the black hair. Well, maybe not black hair. So, bullying can be best described as repeated unreasonable behaviour directed towards an individual or a group, which would reasonably be expected to victimise, humiliate or undermine. You know, and that's a bit of a stodgy old sort of thing. Bullying is not limited to loud and aggressive or suggestive, abusing or demeaning words. And yet, you know, if we look at this and we talk about Australian humour, how much of our humour is based on putting someone down? I mean, I look around here and I see a lot of blonde ladies. You know, they've probably had to put up with a fair bit of nonsense in their time about the fact that they have blonde hair. So some women even change their hair to grey just to escape from the blonde joke. You know, and people say, oh, it's okay, it's in good fun. But you put enough of this on people every day, and I've got to tell you, it's not good fun. And we really have to grow up. I have to grow up. We have to look at finding ways of being humorous, apart finding things to put down other people. If you're born Irish, apart from now being able to marry a gay person, it can be really challenging. You know, so we have to really we have to get ourselves a bit past this. So my emphasis is stop bullying the person we call bully. Start looking at the behaviour as something not personal to the person. And so here's where I go. And I've been kind enough to actually photocopy some of what I was saying today to leave here at the desk, because what I'm going to say is so important. It's important to you working. It's important to you working who are being in some way bullied. It's important that you look at your behaviour in the way you interact with your people. It's important that I look at the way I act with my little granddaughter. I have a daughter called Stacey, who I love. And when she was about 14, because she wasn't studying hard enough, I thought, I said to her, apparently repeatedly, "Oh, good mark, darling, 19 and a half out of 20. Do you think you could do better?" No, it wasn't funny. And she said to me one day, "Dad, will I ever be able to please you?" Now, I thought I was doing something, to motivate her, and I was just being stupid. And luckily, she had enough courage and enough self-esteem to say to me, "Dad, can we change the record?" We all come through life in different ways and different paths. And unfortunately, bullying is a huge part of it. So, as I went through my 2 or 3 different types of speech I was going to give here, I thought I'd just share a couple of things about me. Maybe you wonder after this whether you should have me in the club or not. But I remember I went to school, to a college that my parents could really not afford, and wasted my entire schooling. Absolutely wasted it. And it sort of started when I went to grade 1, and this woman, teacher, lovely woman teacher, who had no children, thought I could be her child. And so she mothered me and looked after me like I was some kind of invalid. And I finally escaped her when I somehow passed grade 1, because there was no test, I think, in those days. For 1, I went into 2, and then she got herself changed to grade 3 so she could have me again. And that really, in many ways, put me down, because it was obvious her favouritism to me. And I can remember a chappie, I won't mention his name, but I wrote it here in my notes, but I'd sit out in the quadrangle, and I'd always choose this particular chair to sit at, and this boy would come along and pull my ears. And it hurt, and it was humiliating, and he did it every day. And I went back every day and sat in the same chair, because that's what we do when we become victimised. We actually go back in and do it again. Now, he wasn't a bad boy. He just got into a habit. And I got into a habit, and together it didn't work. Now, one day, I don't know what happened, I must have had a reflex, and I turned and hit him. He never did it again. And we ended up good friends, the same boy. And that's just, I was actually being the bully to him, because I wasn't doing anything about stopping his behaviour. In fact, I was actually encouraging his behaviour, because there I was again, target Rex, sitting in the same place. Do you get that? Hello? Well, you may well have done, you see, because you may have had higher self-esteem than I did. And I had no self-esteem, you see. And the trouble is, very often we think what people should do, and we pretend they will have the same esteem that we had and could handle it in the same way. Well, I didn't, and I couldn't. And we had a sports master who thought that, in fact, he was perhaps at the AIS or somewhere. And so I can remember when I was 6, I went out to play cricket. And he was using a full cricket set and the hard ball and what have you. And Rex puts his hand up to catch the ball, and I catch it on the end of my finger. Yes, you feel my pain. And I fell to the ground crying. And he called me a stinking little something and sent me off the ground. I didn't have a go at cricket until I was 31 after that event. I played no sport at school, and I allowed myself to be victimised. The school didn't pick it up, and that victimised me, but I didn't do anything about it. So here's the precept I want to talk about. We bully ourselves when we allow unsatisfactory events to occur. That was my challenge. Maybe it was the teacher's challenge, maybe it was my mum and dad's challenge to notice it, but my challenge. And I didn't have the self-esteem. We bully ourselves when we negative self-talk. You're going somewhere and you're talking about how it may not work out. You can feel free to bully at any stage, Cole. Not bully, I'll apologise, interject. We bully ourselves when we become victim. And in fact, you might say the word victim itself is a word that predisposes that we are unable to stand up. And so the whole situation seems endemic. You may have heard of the Pygmalion conversation. We live up to or down to our expectations, or others' expectations, and it becomes self-fulfilling. So under the heading of bullying, I want us to think about when we have a situation, don't listen to people who say it can't be fixed. Don't listen to people who say we've tried everything, because we've never tried everything. And these things are fixable. If you go to my website, you'll see 6 or 7 case studies I've got there which may well explain that in a different way. So let's have a think about my personal responsibility in helping others escape bullying and myself escaping bullying. Thank you. If there are any questions at all, I'd be very happy to, in whatever time we have left, attempt to answer it. I'm going to get Ian to paraphrase your question because I probably won't hear it.
Are there any questions for Rex? Yeah. How much bullying is created by poor mentoring?
It's never about the person mentoring, it's never about right or wrong, bad or good people. But mentoring comes out of a clear job description, comes out of a clear performance management structure. If there's any structures within business which is not working, it's performance management. And so people are allowed to continue. In fact, we know who is bullying people in our workplace, and the managers, not leaders, the managers pay them again next week to come back and do it again next week. It's just not right. And if I can tell you, and on the website, you'll see almost all of these are fixable. That's the incredibly sad thing, almost all of these are fixable.
Any other questions for Rex? Yes, David.
I think the question was, bullying seems to be very present in schools and what's happening about it. My wife's a teacher, she's a kindergarten teacher, and on my website you'll see a case study about the bullying that kindergarten teachers do. I just happen to think that most of the strategies that are currently being employed are wrong. Most of them are about attending to the person with the bullying behaviour. Very little else is happening. And so kids just don't arrive at grade 6 and become bullies. They have been practicing this for some time. And so we need to be talking to parents, and we need to be looking at leadership. And right now, it's always back on the individual. Go outside and sit out. It's that focus on the you are wrong. And the boys and girls will live down to our expectations, and it will be self-fulfilling. So I think it's currently on the wrong track.
One more question, or is that it? What? President David. Oh.
I'll use the microphone. My wife's a school counsellor and she's dealing with kids that are affected by bullying and the kids that do bullying. And she tells me that the first thing that you've got to do is to confront the bully and let him know what their behaviour is doing. Would you care to comment on that?
I'm just a new boy here. Am I going to comment on the president's wife? That could almost be bullying. I don't want us to joke about this term because it's too easy to minimalise it. I don't believe that is the right strategy. It's the strategy that's being put forward by education. I can't remember the last time I've seen a good strategy come out of education. Seriously. You know, all good people, but I just don't think they're on the right track. Far too much emphasis on the person with the behaviour, almost always in a personal way. As hard as they try to make it situational, almost always personal. The child's taken out of the class, the child's seen singularly, and nothing around them. You see, when that child arrived in that school class, the teacher, the leader, would have seen the behaviour. And too often we take the attitude of, let's just watch it and see what happens, which means let's approve it for a little while and then become inconsistent. So I just think we're on the wrong track, and I'm hoping to get in some situation where I can help to see a new way, because it certainly isn't helping. You know, youth suicide is on the increase. The second biggest killer of youth is suicide, and I would say a major reason for suicide is the impact of bullying on those individuals. Very serious.
Would you mind joining me and standing and thanking Rex for his presentation today? And if you want to look at his website, it's www.colourthinking.com.au. Thank you.